Welcome back to Joy Recovery Radio, where we're dedicated to helping couples find healing and hope after sexual infidelity and betrayal trauma. We share real stories, practical strategies, and deep insights to support you on both sides of this difficult journey. We truly believe this message can change lives, and you can help us reach more people by engaging with our content. Wherever you listen, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, please hit that follow or subscribe button. A quick like and a 5-star review also goes a long way, helping others discover our community when they need it most. Let's dive into today's episode.
Today, we're stepping into a conversation that sits at the very center of addiction recovery, betrayal healing, and relationship restoration. It's a conversation about value, specifically how everyone loses when women are devalued. We're going to talk about sex, shame, science, and scripture. But beneath all of that, what we're really talking about is value. At the root of sex addiction is a lie about value. That lie usually sounds something like this: people exist to serve my needs. Or their value is based on what they give me. That kind of thinking is the seed of objectification. That's the moment when a person stops being someone and starts becoming something. It's when a person becomes a tool to manage my pain or validate my worth. Objectification is a way of seeing the entire world. It's a lens that says, you are a resource for my relief. And that is the exact opposite of intimacy. Objectification says, I use you. Intimacy says, I see you. Objectification requires distance and control, whereas intimacy requires presence, empathy, and equality. But the tragedy is that when you stop seeing others as valuable, you slowly lose your own sense of value too. In other words, devaluation doesn't just harm the one who is being objectified, it corrodes the soul of the one who's doing the objectifying. Because here's what happens inside. When I strip others of dignity, I quietly forfeit my own dignity. And the longer I live that way, the more disconnected I become from God, from others, or from my true self. At its core, addiction says, I will use you to make me feel better. But intimacy, real intimacy, says something very different. I see you, I honor you, and I don't need to consume you in order to connect with you. Let me give you a test. This test will help you see if you're living from a place of using people or valuing people. It's a simple question. When I look at another person, do I see their humanity or my opportunity? That cuts through everything. It exposes the belief system that drives addiction, the worship of self at the expense of others. Here's the good news. If addiction begins with a lie about value, then healing begins with the truth about value. You can retrain your eyes to see in a healthy way again. You can re-architect a worldview where people are sacred, not consumable, where connection replaces control, where intimacy replaces indulgence. Let's look at the psychology of objectification. According to neuroscience, repeated exposure to pornography or sexual fantasy actually reshapes the reward circuitry of the brain. Here's how it works. Every image, every click, every fantasy triggers a hit of dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical of anticipation and reward. Over time, the brain doesn't get the same effect from the same hit, and it begins to crave novelty, not connection. It's not about people anymore. It's about a chemical rush. And to protect that rush, the brain subconsciously depersonalizes the other person. She's not someone's daughter. She's not someone's sister. She's not an image bearer of God. She's an object. She's a transport system to deliver my high. Sex addiction in many ways is a chemical addiction without the syringe. There's dopamine instead of heroin, pixels instead of cocaine powder. We are using this person for escape. It's certainly not about intimacy, but it is about anesthesia. Here's the devastating truth. You can only become addicted to something sacred if you first remove its sacredness. Sex addiction requires objectification. It demands devaluing the other. It can't exist without it. So, sex addiction, it's not simply an issue of impulse control. It's an issue of value distortion. That's the psychology. Let's look at the theology. Well, why does theology even matter? Because personally, I'm convinced that recovery without theology is just behavior management, and it's not as effective. The fact is, the 12 steps, they are a spiritual program that offers a spiritual solution to a spiritual problem. Way back in the creation narrative, in Genesis 1, we're told God created humankind in his own image. Male and female, he created them in his own image. So both men and women are image bearers of God. That means every woman that you've ever seen, every man that you've ever met, they carry something sacred within them. There's a reflection of the divine. She is not your outlet. She is God's daughter. He is not your project. He's God's son. And we're told that when God fashioned woman from the man's side, from his rib, it was not from his head so that she could rule over him, and it was not from his feet so that she could be beneath him, but it was from his side. God was giving us a picture of equality, partnership, shared dignity, someone beside us, not beneath us. To devalue women or men, it isn't just unkind. It is a form of blasphemy. It's to degrade the very reflection of God's character that's in creation. There has to be a shift in our view and our belief system. We must stop seeing women as outlets and start seeing them as reflections of God's character. And we must stop seeing ourselves as worthless and stop seeing ourselves as his beloved image bearer. Here's where that touches recovery. Until a man revalues women, he cannot retrain his sexuality. Lust doesn't originate in the body. Lust begins with our belief system. At its core, lust is a belief long before it's a behavior. Lust is the way I view before it's something I do. Lust begins when I stop believing that people are sacred. When I stop believing that another person has a soul, that they carry the breath of God in them. Specifically, lust happens when I believe 3 lies. Lie number 1 is about God, that he's withholding something from me, and his boundaries are punishment. They're not protection. The second lie is a lie about others. Others exist to meet my needs rather than to reflect God's image. And the third lie that happens when we engage in lust is a lie about myself, that I am defined and driven by my appetites instead of my identity. By the time lust shows up in the body, the real battle has already been lost in the mind, because behavior simply reveals belief. When I see a person and I reduce them to an object of consumption, my body is simply following my theology. I have stopped seeing with respect, and I've started seeing with entitlement. That's why your recovery has to go deeper than just stopping porn or managing your triggers. Yes, those are important boundaries, but that's not the heart of the issue. The heart is your belief. Specifically, 3 things that determine everything. What do I believe about God? What do I believe about myself? And what do I believe about people? When your belief changes, behavior will follow. Lust is not about too much desire. It's about too little truth. Now let's turn our attention to betrayal trauma. Up to this point, we've looked at the root of value, the psychology, and the theology, how objectification reshapes the brain and how it distorts the image of God. But now we need to move from the theoretical to the deeply, deeply personal. Because this isn't just about synapses or scripture. It's also about the sacredness of the victim in this equation. So let's talk about what happens when the devaluation of women impacts the betrayed partner of the devaluer. For her, it's not just about the discovery of betrayal. It's the shock of being unseen. When a partner realizes that they themselves have been objectified, meaning that they have not been truly seen or valued themselves, then something inside of them breaks at their level of identity. It's not only you cheated or you lied, it's that you stopped seeing me. You stopped seeing all women as truly people. That's trauma. Not just because of the behavior alone, but because of what the behavior meant. I wasn't real to you. No one was real to you. True recovery is the process of rehumanization. It's learning to see again and to be seen again. When the addict learns to see again, and the partner learns to be seen again, recovery stops being about behavior management, and it becomes about the restoration of value. Because what was broken by devaluation can only be healed through revaluation. through the daily practice of treating people, especially women, as sacred reflections of the divine.
At joy-recovery.com, we offer personalized recovery coaching to help you move from pain to purpose. We also provide supportive groups where you can connect with others who truly understand. So, whether you're battling addiction, healing from betrayal, or rebuilding a brand new relationship, you're not alone. We can help. Go to joy-recovery.com today.
So let's talk about the path back. How do we revalue women? How do we retrain our minds? How do we recover? How do we rebuild a sexuality that honors instead of harms? Let me give you 5 truths to practice in your recovery. Number 1, rebuild your vision. Jesus once said, if your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. That's not just a verse about eyesight. It's a verse about insight. Recovery begins with how you see. Addiction at its root is a way of seeing that has been distorted and corrupted. It's vision that is turned inward, seeing people as instruments of relief instead of reflections of God. When the lens is distorted, everything that passes through it also becomes distorted. That's why the work of recovery is not only about avoiding certain behaviors, it's about retraining your eyes, your mind, your attention. When temptation comes, and it will come, you pause long enough to whisper, this is someone God loves, not something that I use. And that one small mantra can begin to retrain your brain. Because every time you choose to see someone as sacred instead of sexualized, you're building new neural pathways towards empathy, not exploitation. Number 2, replace fantasy with connection. Once you start to rebuild your vision, the next step is learning to replace fantasy with connection. Fantasy is the counterfeit of intimacy. It promises closeness, but it delivers loneliness. In fantasy, everything revolves around me, my timing, my pleasure, my story, my experience, my emotions. But in connection, everything expands beyond me. It's us. It's relationship. It's shared reality. Psychologists call this type of fantasy maladaptive daydreaming or dissociative coping. It's a way of escaping pain rather than engaging it. But in recovery, we start to name it for what it really is. It's a substitute for intimacy. It's the illusion of being wanted without the risk of being known. It's artificial closeness without honesty or transparency. It's arousal but no attachment. It's how we silence our loneliness or rejection or shame or fear. But every time we use fantasy to escape pain, we're also escaping healing. Connection is the antidote to addiction. Connection is what the brain and the soul were designed for. From the very first chapters of Genesis, God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." We were created for co-regulation. We were designed to feel safe in the presence of another. And neuroscience tells us that healthy relationships will literally rewire your brain. Things like eye contact and empathy and safe human touch release oxytocin and serotonin, the same chemicals that addiction tries to imitate. That means that healing happens through healthy attachment. Every time you choose real connection over fantasy, you are rebuilding trust, not just with others, but within yourself. You're telling your nervous system, I can stay present. I can survive reality. I don't need to escape to be okay. Number 3, repair the narrative. Once you begin to rebuild your vision and replace fantasy with connection, the next step is to repair the narrative. The narrative is the story you tell yourself about who you are and what your life means. Because here's the truth. Addiction and betrayal don't just break relationships. They rewrite our stories. They fill in false chapters about your identity. They convince you that you are what you've done, or that you deserved what happened to you. Shame becomes the narrator of your story. Shame always tells the same story, no matter who it's speaking to. To the addict, shame says, you're beyond redemption. To the betrayed partner, shame says, you weren't enough. 2 different sentences, same poison. You are what shame says you are. That's why recovery has to start rewriting your story. Because healing isn't just about behavior, it's about your identity. And if you don't change the story is going to change you. In trauma therapy, this process is called narrative reconstruction. It's the work of going back into your story, this time with truth and compassion, and integrating what happened rather than being defined by it. When we experience trauma or addiction, the brain gets stuck in loops of survival and shame. Our memories, our beliefs, they become fragmented and frozen in time. But when we begin to tell our story truthfully, in the presence of empathy and safety, something remarkable happens. The brain starts to rewire. The story reorganizes around truth instead of fear. That's why confession or journaling or sharing your story in a group, those aren't just spiritual practices. They're neurological repair tools. They literally help your brain rebuild meaning and coherence and peace. So for the addict, if you're in addiction recovery, repairing your narrative means refusing to let your lowest moments define your identity. You are not your browser history. You are not your acting out. You are not the version of self that hid and lied and numbed. You are, in essence, an image bearer who is learning to live like one again. And every time you tell the truth, every time you choose honesty over hiding, you are editing your story, one paragraph at a time. Your past explains you, but it does not define you. For the betrayed partner, repairing the narrative means separating what happened to you from who you are. Shame will tell you you weren't enough. But truth says this: you were never the problem to fix. You were the person who deserved safety. You did not cause this brokenness. You were caught in the fallout of someone else's false story. And your healing is not about rewriting their narrative. It's about reclaiming your own. When you remember your worth, apart from what someone else did or didn't do, you begin to step back into the truth that was always there. You are a beloved daughter of God. You are chosen. You are not disposable. Now, repairing the narrative does not mean denying the pain or pretending that the story never happened or that it's over. It means shifting from being defined by your past to being refined through it. That is, the same story that once held your shame can become the story that carries your strength. You can't erase the past, but you can reclaim its meaning. And when truth becomes the narrator again, shame loses the microphone. That's what it means to repair the narrative. Number 4, restore the sacred. Addiction, betrayal, they all do the same thing. They strip life of its sacredness. They train us to treat what is holy as ordinary and what is ordinary as disposable. Pornography does this. Hookup culture does this. The result is the same. We stop seeing sexuality as something that is spiritual, and we start seeing it as something that is purely transactional or functional. It's a coping mechanism. It's a form of currency, or it's a form of entertainment. And God never designed sex to be an escape from pain. He designed it as a reflection of covenant love. That means sex is not just physical, it's theological. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul says, "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Spirit, who is in you, whom you received from God? You're not your own. You were bought with a price." Now, that verse is not meant to shame. It's meant to dignify. It's God saying, you matter that much. Your body, your mind, your sexuality, all of it was designed to carry His presence. God never abandoned the sacred in you. He's just waiting for you to see it again. Finally, number 5, we men need to revalue our partner's healing. We've talked about restoring our vision and replacing fantasy with connection, repairing the narrative, restoring the sacred. But now comes the most relational and in many ways the most redemptive step, and that is revaluing our partner's healing. Addiction isolates, but love restores. And for that restoration to happen, the betrayed partner's healing must be treated as just as sacred as the addict's sobriety. Too often, the recovering partner hits a milestone. I've been sober for 90 days, or I've been honest for 6 months. And they assume that healing has caught up with them. But trauma does not move at the same pace as sobriety. So when you're walking through relational recovery, remember these thoughts. Sobriety happens one day at a time. Safety happens one choice at a time. Trust happens one season at a time. So you can earn sobriety with time. You can build safety with consistency. You rebuild trust with patience. Sobriety changes habits. Safety changes patterns. Trust changes the story. Sobriety begins the healing. Safety protects the healing. Trust completes the healing. The brain simply cannot heal in an environment that it perceives as dangerous. So before you ask your partner to trust again, show them that you are trustworthy. If you've been the betrayer, remember, your partner's pain is not an inconvenience. It's evidence that her love was real. When they cry, when they rage, when they withdraw, not because they hate you, it's because their body still remembers what broke. So don't argue with the pain. Hold it. Validate it. Let it change you. Say things like, you don't owe me trust yet. and you have every right to feel what you feel. And I want to become the kind of person who is safe for you to love again. If you're the one who's been betrayed, I want to say this as clearly as I can. Your healing matters. And your pace is no one else but yours. You are not required to rush forgiveness just to make him feel better. And you are not responsible if he relapses. When both partners begin to live this way, when one humbly seeks to be safe and the other bravely allows healing to unfold, something divine happens. The relationship becomes a sacred exchange of grace. You start to see what redemption really means. Not erasing the past, but repurposing it. Not pretending the betrayal never happened, but letting it become the soil where something new grows. This is the beauty of revaluation. When a woman who was devalued is seen again, God rejoices. When a man learns to see his partner and honor her, God celebrates. Because in that moment, both are reflecting the image of God, the God who restores what infidelity tries to steal. Revaluing your partner's healing is the final proof that recovery has reached your heart, where seeing and being seen coexist in safety again. When that happens, everyone wins, because no one loses when a woman is valued. No one loses when a man learns to honor women, starting with his own partner. And no one loses when both of you reflect the sacred image you were made to carry. If you're walking through betrayal trauma today, hear this. Your worth was never diminished by someone else's actions. You are still the beloved image of God. Your safety, your voice, your healing, they matter. If you're the one in addiction recovery, remember, recovery is not measured by sobriety alone. It's measured by how you love your partner. Sobriety is just the starting point. But seeing rightly, that's where recovery is. Neither one of you are beyond redemption. In fact, you're right in the middle of it.
That wraps up another episode of Joy Recovery Radio. We hope our conversation today brought you clarity, comfort, or a new perspective on your journey. Remember, healing is possible, and you don't have to walk this path alone. To learn more about how we can support you, visit us at joy-recovery.com. There, you'll find information about our individual and couples coaching practice, designed to provide tailored support for both addicts and betrayed partners. You can also explore our various online groups, offering safe and confidential spaces for connection, shared experience, and growth. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, choose joy.